Good morning, everybody. So, welcome to the next section. We're going to talk about the Soviet Union and also the invasion of Europe by the Allies. So, last time we took notes, you guys were dealing with the German invasion of the Soviet Union and finding out the same deal that you have with the rest of Europe. This blitzkrieg attack is going to go through the vast majority of Soviet Union relatively easily, and he's going to be able, Hitler's going to be able to conquer a lot of land. With that, however, his supply lines are going to be stretched relatively thin. But the Nazis are going to do one last push into the Soviet Union and try to take Stalingrad. If Nazi Germany is able to conquer Stalingrad, basically they can just march straight through to Moscow and they've got gained control of the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union is going to turn to the Allies for assistance, and we are going to provide them some with the land lease program that we provided for the other Allied countries, and also we do promise that a second front will be opened up as soon as possible. The location of that second front, though, is something that's going to be relatively difficult to deal with because we're going to have to solve a problem. The biggest problem is that the Germans have built this relatively large fortified wall all along the Atlantic coast, so that's going to be very, very difficult to penetrate. So the only way we can think of to get into Europe is actually going to be through Italy. So we are going to focus first on taking a look at conquering some of the African colonies, and then from Africa, launch an invasion across the ocean into Italy. From Italy, get over the Alps in order to attack the rest of Germany. Problem is, the Alps are pretty hard to get through. So we're going to have to go back to the first plan, which is taking a look at the Atlantic Wall. The Atlantic Wall is going to be built, and it's going to be about 1,600 miles, and it's going to go all the way from Scandinavia all the way down into France, along France, and then all the way down and sort of loop around Spain. So it is a very heavily fortified area that's going to cover the vast majority of the coastline. The Atlantic Wall is going to have 15,000 reinforced concrete bunkers for troops, observations, and supplies. So the German troops along this Atlantic Wall, they're not vulnerable to attack. They've got the high position. They've got everything set up as you're going up from the ocean into the beaches, so that you're basically an open target, which is one of the reasons why we originally decided that attacking on this Atlantic Wall was not going to be possible. However, since we know that going through the Alps also is not possible, our leaders are going to start to plan the invasion of Europe through D-Day. So the Allies decide the Atlantic Wall it has to be. So the D-Day invasion is going to occur on June 6th of 1944. It is the largest amphibious invasion from sea to land in history, and it's going to be led by General Dwight Eisenhower, who eventually is going to become a president as well. In order for the D-Day invasion to occur, it actually has to come in three phases. The first one is going to be called Operation Overlord. During Operation Overlord, paratroopers are going to drop behind the beaches in order to seize the roads and the bridges, so the Germans will not be able to come off of sort of like the Atlantic Wall from the back side of it to support their attack. We're going to have airplanes that are going to weaken German defenses along the beaches, and as our airplanes are actually dropping bombs on the beaches, they're actually going to be served as craters for the soldiers to dive into to get some cover on these open beaches. So the ground troops will then come in, take the beaches, be able to jump from crater to crater as they attack up in order to actually capture the Atlantic Wall. Many things are going to go wrong with this D-Day invasion. The very first thing that goes wrong is a lot of the paratroopers are actually going to land in the wrong place. They're too far back, so they're not actually close enough to cut off the German troops that are behind the Atlantic Wall. So what you basically have now is you're going to have ground troops coming in on the beaches, the Atlantic Wall, German troops, and then behind the German troops, the paratroopers. So they're really not going to be very effective. Airplanes also are going to drop the bombs way too far inland. It was actually bad timing weather-wise. There's going to be a lot of fog, so the pilots have a hard time seeing where they're actually dropping the bombs. So again, when the ground troops are going to advance, they're not actually going to have these craters to use for protection. So that's actually going to end up escalating the casualties during the D-Day invasion. And then, to make things even worse, obviously the seas were relatively rough as well, besides just the fog. So some of the soldiers actually are going to land in the wrong spot and then have to backtrack several miles in order to get into their proper positions. So overall, the D-Day invasion really initially did not go well. Things eventually are going to be okay, and we are going to see that American troops are going to land at the Omaha and Utah beaches. The fighting is going to be relatively fierce on all the beach fronts on D-Day, but the Americans are going to be able actually to secure all of their beaches and then help the other countries secure their beaches as well. In terms of how this actually is going to occur, because obviously Hitler and Germany are looking for an American attack and an Allied attack along the Atlantic Wall, which is why they built this huge fortification. So in order for this to happen, we actually had to use a little bit of espionage and deception. So we are going to start first with Operation Fortitude. On Operation Fortitude, you're going to have double agents and German spies that are going to be discovered in Great Britain, and they're going to be given faulty information to give back to Hitler. And basically, this faulty information, the double spy, is going to be called Garbo. And Garbo is going to give a lot of detailed information about the supposed attack that's going to happen. Because he is giving such detailed information that actually can be verified, Hitler does believe the information is true and is going to actually divert some of his troops. So the first thing they say is the invasion would be at the Atlantic Wall. And in order to do that, we're going to see a shifting of troops going on, and this is going to be one of the proof that Hitler uses in order to verify that this actually is true information. So the British Fourth Army in Scotland is going to be ready to join the Soviet Army, and so they're going to actually do it through Norway. So first we're going to go conquer Norway, go through Norway, and then from Norway come down from the north in order to get into the Soviet Union, join Soviet forces there, and then we'll be able to push the Germans back. So that's one thing. And you do actually see the movement of the troops, so that is going to be verified by Hitler. We also have a lot of incorrect radar chatter about cold weather operations. So how cold is it before a gun starts to freeze? What do the soldiers need to wear? What kind of protection do they need to have for clothing? What about the temporary shelter and camping? So all that's going on the radio. The radio is actually obviously going to be also monitored by Nazi Germany. So that is going to again verify the fact that this attack truly is going through Norway and not along the Atlantic Wall. The next one is actually going to be a whole bunch of inflatables. They're going to have inflatable tanks and inflatable trucks and inflatable villages, inflatable men, basically that they are going to plant and move periodically to look like we actually have Allied forces that are moving their way towards Norway in order to help the Soviet Union. Hitler buys the deception, and he decides to move a very, very large section of his army north into Scandinavia. From that point, they'd be able to block the invasion coming from Norway, and then we'd be able to secure, again, maintaining the fight against the Soviet Union without help. While they have moved their troops up into Scandinavia, this is all under false pretenses because the mass majority of the Allied troops are actually still over in Britain, and they're going to be coming over with the D-Day invasion. All right, so what if D-Day didn't work? D-Day was extremely important for many, many factors. The first thing is that it's actually going to allow a foothold on Europe that is not going to be an area that's either controlled by Germany or is currently fighting Germany. So from this invasion in Normandy, France, we're going to be able basically to liberate France and Paris within 8 weeks. You also are going to see allies in position to attack Germany from the west. So now this two-front war truly is open. Again, we did have some very small French resistance inside of France, but it was small. So this is now a much larger force. It is a fighting force, a trained force with supplies, and now this is someone that can potentially challenge the German army. If this D-Day invasion actually had failed, it would have been months before something else could have been organized, funds procured, soldiers trained and got to the right places. So this had to be successful. It's going to save lots of lives, it's going to save money, and it also is going to save a lot of supplies. All right, so now we've got these two fronts open, and both fronts are going to be moving in on Germany. Germany is running out of men. They're running out of supplies. In a last-ditch effort, they're going to expand their draft. They're going to allow anyone from the ages of 16 to 60 to be enlisted in the German army. And basically, one big last stand for Germany is going to be at the Battle of the Bulge, which is going to occur inside of Belgium. And it actually is going to be the largest land battle that occurs in World War II. Civilians actually are going to tell the Allies that the German army is gathering, and they are coming coming in. So Germany thinks this is going to be a surprise attack, but the Allies have already been alerted. So the Allies are going to start to move their troops, although the Germans don't know it. So they're going to have a pretty large force there as well. Germany does launch the surprise attack. Americans are going to arrive, and Americans are going to be able to stop the German advance. Again, one last ground effort. Germany has over 200,000 troops there, and they're going to be reinforced by another 100,000. There's 400 tanks, 1,900 guns. On the other side, on the Allied side, there's 83,000 American troops. 610,000 are going to be going to this area over the course of the battle. So we have a tremendous amount of men there. We've got lots of tanks, lots of destroyers, lots of artillery. So this is going to be a one last big battle for basically who's going to control Europe, and the Allies are going to eventually be able to win the Battle of the Bulge. Once the Battle of the Bulge is over, it's very, very clear that Germany has lost this war, and we are going to have eventually VE Day, which is Victory in Europe, on May 8th of 1945. Hitler eventually is going to commit suicide in April, and then previously, and also in April, Franklin Roosevelt's actually going to die of a stroke, and we are going to have a new president who is going to be inaugurated, the Vice President Henry S. Truman. Harry S. Truman is now going to become President of the United States. Total cost of the war, again, large number of casualties, both in terms of military casualties and civilian casualties. There's going to be over 60 million people that lose their lives during World War II. One of the biggest things that we see in World War II, and we did hear it from Soviet troops as they were advancing in from the east, and we didn't really quite believe it, but eventually the Allied troops are going to, from the west, are going to get to concentration camps and actually see the atrocities that were committed under the idea of having a final solution. The final solution was the extermination of Jews that were going to be held in concentration camps right before you actually had the beginning of the war, and then throughout the whole entire war. So anyone anyone who was Jewish was going to be put into a concentration camp. Some of the concentration camps were for work in order to provide stuff for the war effort. Others were areas where people are going to make things. And if you are able-bodied and you can work, then you are going to be able to survive in the concentration camp as long as possible. When you no longer become useful, you are going to be exterminated using gas chambers. And you also are going to see anyone that's not immediately going to be beneficial to the German war effort be exterminated as well. So children, elderly, and also the sick. And you also are going to see human experimentation being done in the concentration camps. And basically what ends up happening by the time the whole entire war is over, 6 million Jews are going to be executed, which is going to be 2/3 of all the European Jewish population. The Holocaust is one of the things that we must remember in order to make sure that it does not happen again. All right, so war is over inside of Europe, but we still have another theater of war to deal with, and that's going to be on the Pacific coast, dealing with Japan. So Germany has been defeated, and now we do initiate that second prong of the war, which is going to be attempting to invade Japan. The invasion of Japan is going to be very, very difficult because logistically, as a series of islands that we are relatively far away from, the United States is going to have a very, very hard time actually getting to Japan. So the Army and Navy are going to start to work together in order to coordinate an invasion of Japan using aircraft carriers and airplanes in order to basically do a land and sea invasion at the same time. Our first attempt is going to be in April of 1942. It's called the Doolittle Raid. The plan was that we were going to bomb military targets in Japan, and then because our fuel issues, we would not actually be able to get back to the naval carriers, but instead we would then land in China. So Army planes are going to take off of Navy ships for the very first time, and it's going to be an absolute disaster. We do not understand the weight of the plane and how much fuel it's necessary. So basically, when we do reduce the weight of the plane, it's done incorrectly. 16 planes take off, 15 planes crash in China before they actually can get to Japan to bomb it, and one actual plane is actually going to end up crashing inside of the Soviet Union. The Japanese spot the planes relatively quickly, and they're able to basically take the planes down. Again, this is going to be a very big boost for Japanese morale, that the Allies cannot attack us, they cannot get here, we are perfectly safe, and they are going to promise the people inside of Japan that they're never actually going to be attacked. All right, there's about 45 seconds left of this recording before it ends, so I'm going to stop here, and hopefully I got your section 3 back to you, and we'll continue on tomorrow.